All right, great. Thanks very much. And over to you, Cindy and Roxanne.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for your time and for joining us for this webinar. I'm Cindy Erasmus. This is Roxanne Schultz. And just a brief history on myself and where I came from. I've been in aviation since 1994. I didn't actually start in aviation. I have an N6 as a personal assistant and actually started working for SAPI. So from paper to aviation is a completely different spectrum. But yeah, I got into aviation because of my ex-husband. He was a pilot and he was working at the airport. So I decided to find a job at the airport so we could spend some more time together. And my first job was as the personal assistant to the CEO of an airline called Xavier Airlines. And so I moved from the position of PA to reservations and check-in. And I learned quite a bit about the airline procedures and how things are done while I was in the airline. And then from the airlines, I went over to helicopter charter with low-fault helicopter charters, where I looked after 3 long ranges and 2 jet rangers. And helicopters is actually where my passion for aviation started. You can't compare flying in an aeroplane to flying in a helicopter. And I highly recommend flying in a helicopter. And then in 1997, the helicopter company was bought out by a bigger charter company called National Airways Corporation. But unfortunately, in December 2004, retrenched us all. And that's when I started in a partnership with some guys in Joburg, and we started CFA Air Charters. And in 2010, I decided to take the big jump. Very challenging, very nerve-wracking, but I started my own business, CessZani Aviation, in 2010. And it's predominantly male-dominated industry, so it was a really challenging decision. And yeah, people often ask me where the name CessZani comes from. Well, it's a combination of 2 words, CessZani and Indizani. CessZani is obviously the aircraft manufacturer, and Indizani means to soar. So putting the 2 words together, first 4 letters of CessZani, last 4 letters of Indizani, and that's where Indizani came from. And during lockdown, we turned 10 years old. Unfortunately, we weren't able to have a party or a celebration, but we're looking forward to that coming up in the near future. Just a brief history on CessZani as well. We're based at Nelspruit Airport and not at Kruger. Many people don't know that there's actually 2 airports in Nelspruit. The civil over here in Nelspruit, and then Kruger and Mpumalanga, which is the international. There's also 2 airports in Hoedspruit. There's Hoedspruit Civil and Eastgate Airport, just for those of you that didn't know. Piece of interesting information. And then Roxanne, that's sitting here next to me. She does our reservations and quotes and operations. She's been with me since 2012. She's also our company safety officer, and we all work closely together and become like a close family unit. So when I'm not around, Roxanne runs the show. And yeah, based on that, Roxanne's quite shy, so she'll be sitting on the side here. She's not quite the public speaker. So if she's got anything to add while we're busy with the slides, she'll just chip in and help me out. So we have a short video just to introduce what we do and how we do things, and that's it. Let's go with the video.
You're on mute, Andy.
Let's quickly need to change the setting here. Okay, it's perfect. Perfect. Back over to you, Sins.
Thank you. So this is just a quick overview of the aircraft that we currently have available on our AOC, which is our license, but we are not limited to these aircraft. We have other aircraft available, jets and bigger aircraft. But I'm going to give you a quick overview on the aircraft that we have available on our license, and just a description of what we do with them and what we can help with. So Andy, if we can go to the next slide, please.
Yeah.
So this is the CessZani 206. As you can see, it's a single engine high wing. We use this aircraft for the lodge transfers from crew KMIA, Skukuza and Eastgate to the various reserves and lodges in the area, such as the Sabi Sands, Thorny Bush, Manyeleti, Timbavati and Makalali. We are also on the approved list to land at Satara. All our lodge transfers are on a private charter basis, which means we do not shuttle. The guests are met by the pilot with a name board when they arrive at the airport. He then assists them with their luggage and takes them through to the aircraft, where they then go on the direct flight to the lodge airstrip. Skukuza requires a slot approval before we can land. So any flying into Skukuza, we have to first get permission, which we get permission for in the month of travel. Unfortunately, we have spoken to them to try and get this sorted, so we can get advanced permissions, but unfortunately those are the Kruger Park policies, so that's unfortunately what has to happen. We also use the 206 for our add-on packages, which you saw a bit of now in the video, and we will be coming to that shortly in the presentation. This aircraft is ideal for these packages because, as I said just now, it's a high wing, so you can view the scenery below. We also use this aircraft for the golfing flights to Shepherd Creek and to some of the other golfing destinations. We can take golf clubs in this, but then again, we are limited with the space and passengers, just to bear that in mind. Andy, can we go to the next slide? Okay, this is the CessZani 210. It is also high wing, also single engine. What you have with this is you have a bit faster speed. So we would use this aircraft for your longer flights to Pafuri or Pinda because of this extra speed. And we restrict it down to 3 passengers. Just basically, we've restricted it down to 3 passengers just for passenger comfort at the end of the day. Yeah. We also use this aircraft for flights to Maputo, for the flights for people connecting to White Pearl or Mashangulu. Just because, as I said, the speed is a bit better, it adds to passenger comfort. Andy, can we go to the next slide? Okay, this is the Beechcraft Baron. It's the smallest of the twins that we have available. This aircraft is well suited for 2 to 4 passengers from Joburg to the lodges in the Lowvelds, or flights from the Lowveld lodges to Pando or Mazangwenya for Rocktail Bay. Just a bit of information: when the passengers arrive in Johannesburg, they are met by a Bid Air VIP assist representative as they disembark from their flight, and they are assisted through customs and immigration, and then taken to our aircraft for their direct flight to the lodge. And if we can go to the next slide, please, Andy. Okay, this is the CessZani 402, also twin engine aircraft, slightly bigger than the Baron. It has better endurance for slightly longer flights. So we would generally use this for flights to Vilankulos, which is a more cost-effective option to combine your beach and bush, and even flights to Victoria Falls. It would be an ideal machine. You can see inside, you have a bit more space inside this aircraft than you do in the Baron, and it is fairly comfortable inside.
Next
Slide. Thank you, Andy. Sorry. Okay, this is the Kodiaq. It's a single engine turbine. We typically use this aircraft for bigger groups, of people going to the lodges, or flights from Joburg to the Liftoff lodges. It is slightly slower than the twins, so not ideal for long distances. But as you can see, comfort inside, you've got quite a bit of space. There's a pod underneath for the luggage, and it's generally passenger-friendly aircraft.
Yeah.
Okay. Next slide, please, Andy. Okay, this is the CesZani Caravan. It's also single-engine turbine, but it has 12 seats. It is also about the same speed as the Kodiaq in comparison to the twins, but it still flies at 280 kilometers per hour, which is obviously much faster than a car. We use this aircraft for bigger groups as well, for the lodge transfers or flights from Joburg to the Liftoff lodges. It is also a good aircraft for your bush and beach combination. And I mean, if you wanted to do this scenic flight in this, you could, because obviously it is a high wing. But generally, we've used the CessZani Jet for the scenic flights and for the add-on packages. Andy, next slide, please. Okay, this is the Kingi 200. This is a VIP machine. It's air conditioned and pressurized. That means that it climbs above the clouds when the weather is inclement. The main difference between unpressurized and pressurized, which the other aircraft that have been before this have all been unpressurized aircraft, is obviously the cabin. And this influences the altitude at which we can fly. So the previous aircraft, generally, the maximum height altitude that we would fly is between 10 and 12,000 feet, which generally means that, you know, you are stuck in the inclement weather with the smaller aircraft. So the Kingi is an ideal machine to be flying your VIPs and people that would like to be from point A to point B at a quicker, faster time, because obviously the speed being 420 kilometers.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
Yeah. Yeah. This aircraft would be ideal for flights in Southern Africa. We would use this aircraft for flights to Cape Town or neighboring countries such as Mozambique, Namibia, Zambia, Zimbabwe. The furthest we've gone is Uganda in the Kingi. Obviously, we need to make fuel stops along the way. But, you know, we're not restricted into with the aircraft that we've just shown you now. We have access to jets such as the Hawker 900 XP, Challenger 300, as well as Boeing 737s. As a licensed operator, we have agreements with other charter operators for preferential rates. So the difference between an operator and a broker is that an operator is licensed and manages and crews the aircraft, where a broker is like a hippo. But they still need to add on commission onto a licensed operator's price. So that's just a quick overview on what your differences would be. Can we go to the next slide, please, Andy? Okay, this is the Bell Jet Ranger, a single engine helicopter. We use this for the various packages, which we'll be coming to shortly. It has 4 seats, but it depends on the passenger weights, whether or not we can take 4. You'll also see on this slide is the picture of the boot space. It is very limited. So if passengers wanted to do a transfer from Kruger to the lodges, they can do that. But generally, the luggage would have to go by road. We also use this aircraft for the golf packages. Unfortunately, no golf clubs in this. They'd have to hire at the various golf clubs. Next slide, please, Andy. Okay, this is the Bell Long Ranger, similar to the Jet Ranger. It has 2 extra seats you can see in the back. Just bear in mind that if you did have 6 passengers, it would also be weight dependent. But if you look on the slide, you'll see the 3 passengers in the back. If there are 3 big adults, it is rather cramped. Just to bear that in mind, ideally for 5. So when we have bigger groups of people, we would use a combination of the Jet Ranger and the Long Ranger. There is more than one Jet Ranger available, so we can accommodate bigger groups. As I say, it would be weight dependent as to how many people we can put in. And I think that's it.
Yep.
Can we go on to the next slide, please, Andy? Okay, so our add-on packages are in the airplanes as well as helicopters. We've offered these packages in between game drives. So departure would be after morning game drive and passengers would be back before afternoon game drive. So we started this because we would get lots of requests from lodges or agents to say, okay, well, my guests here for 4 days, they've done game drive for 2 days. What else can they do? So that's where this started. Can we have the next slide, please, Andy? Okay, this is our fly and ride package. Guests are picked up at the lodge and then they're flown through to Kaapstad Airstrip where they're met by the crew from Kaapstad Horse Trails. And then they're allocated a horse according to their riding abilities. The outride is approximately an hour and a half through the picturesque escarpment and forest, with the possibility of seeing wild horses. Just Kaapstad is on the Drakensberg escarpment. So I'm not sure if everybody knows, but the Drakensberg escarpment goes all the way from KwaZulu-Natal all the way up into Mpumalanga and going through to Limpopo. There is a basic restaurant at Kaapstad. If guests get back from the outride and they want to have a quick bite or they want to have something to drink, they can do that. Or if they want to, they can get the lodge to pack them a picnic. And they're welcome to have a picnic there at Kaapstad. It is absolutely tranquil, and being in amongst horses is therapeutic.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that.
If you can have the next slide, please, Andy. Okay, so the bladder blower. This is one of the more popular packages. The guests are met at the airstrip and then they're flown over the three rondavels, over the Trier and Bladder rivers, and then down to the Lisbon and Berlin waterfalls, over the Pinnacle and God's Window. In the helicopter package, they stop at the Pinnacle for the picnic. And then after the picnic, they're then flown over the Forest Falls and the Macmac Falls before returning back to the lodge again. Not many people know where the two rivers, where the Trier and the Bladder River meet, is the power station. This actually generated power for Pilgrim's Rest, and Pilgrim's Rest had electricity before London. I don't know if anybody knew that, but fun fact. The power station, the Chums Falls, and the Macmac Cascades, you can generally only see from the air, so it is quite a special experience. Can go. You'll also see on this slide that we have. Sorry, Andy. Apologies. You'll also see on the slide that we have the helicopter with picnic tables and chairs. This is not our norm per se, but we have had requests where people have asked if we can do it. It is a possibility, but generally people will have their picnic in amongst the rocks at the Pinnacle. Yeah. Next slide, please, Andy. Okay, the Zani Zippet. Once again, guests are flown from the lodge airstrip to Hazy View. There they're met by the transfer company and then taken to Skyway Trails for their safety briefing. Once the safety briefing is completed, they're taken to the start of the zip line. There are 10 platforms, 8 zip lines, and it's approximately 2.5 hours. It also depends on the size of the group as to how long it takes. And
we've got the video.
I would highly recommend this for the more adventurous guests. It's really a thrill. My daughter and I have done it. I can recommend it. After the zip line, you go back to Skyway Trails, drop off the gear, and then back to Hazy View Airstrip for the flight back to the lodge. And that's it.
Make it back in time video.
We've got the video to play.
Yes, please.
Cool.
Thanks. Okay, so this is the Zani Liftoff. Once again, guests are flown from the larger airstrip through to Kroskop. At Kroskop, they're met by the transfer company, taken through to the Gorge Lift Company, and then they go down the 51-meter lift, 51-meter trip down the glass lift to the forest floor. There are wooden walkways and suspension bridges to the Matetse waterfall with interpretation exhibits along the way. It's a good getaway, and Andy's done it as well. I'm sure he'll also highly recommend that.
Yeah, it's really smart.
Once the trip to the forest floor is done, guests can have a bite to eat at the restaurant, or else if they want to go back to the lodge, we can fly them back to the lodge. There are guided tours available on request, and there's a brief video on basically what happens at the lift as well. If you can go ahead with that, please, Andy.
Cool. Stop at Jelson's or play the full thing? Okay, guys, that basically, it just goes on to show a little bit of the restaurant and stuff. That's basically most of the visuals for the video. Over to you, Sins.
See, we've got Daphne who's made a comment there just saying for adrenaline junkies, there's also a swing as well, opposite of the gorge lift, which is really amazing.
Yes, that's true. We haven't included that in our package per se, but for those that adrenaline junkies that are there that want to do that, I'm sure we can help them out with that.
Yeah, but in fact, I've done it. 60 odd meters bridge swing. You jump off a platform and then you free fall for a couple of seconds, and then you swing out, and then basically they lower you to the canopy or pull you up to the other side actually. So yeah, it was an adrenaline experience. I don't know if I'd do it again, to be fair.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Thanks, Andy. So basically, in a nutshell, that covers everything that we do and what we have to offer. As I mentioned before, we fly all over within Southern Africa. If there's a destination with a suitable airstrip, we'd be able to fly there. So,
and I think, you know, guests come to South Africa to experience South Africa, and with what we do, from lodge transfers in the aircraft to the packages, it's just experiencing on top of their experiencing South Africa at a completely different angle. I think it's just necessary to add that. Okay, thanks, Rob.
So I've got one question coming through from Sian, just asking, are the costs for the meet and greet also included in the rates?
Yes, there are.
Thanks, Sins. Just clarifying.
So, sorry,
100%.
maybe I missed it. Did you chat to people about your bases in Johannesburg and some of the aircraft that are based in Johannesburg from a charter perspective?
Okay, so yeah, sorry, Andy, I didn't. We have aircraft based in Johannesburg as well as based in Mpumalanga, just so that we can give a full package with regards to costings. So we do get requests for flights from Joburg to Madikwe, or from Joburg through to Vic Falls, so we do have aircraft that are based up there that we make use of. There's a variety of aircraft from the Conquest to King Air, and for those that we don't particularly operate, we have partnerships with other charter companies, so we do have access to other aircraft if that is required.
Perfect. I just want to also chuck a couple of things in here before we end off, if that's all right. So guys, and I'm going to plant some seeds in your brain. So a lot of you are wanting to kind of link, or are linking, let's say, the Sabi Sands with a Botswana experience. Just so that you know, an average travel day from the Sabi Sands through to Botswana would involve probably missing morning game drive in the Sabi Sands, getting to or KMIA or Skukuza, catching some sort of scheduled flights, then from there through to Johannesburg, another scheduled flight to Maun with a local light aircraft operator from Maun into the lodges. And you know that all of these times that you are kind of stopping at an airport, you've got to be there an hour, sometimes 2, sometimes 2.5, especially with COVID and testing, probably 3.5 hours before. So it's just going to add, by the time you've kind of looked at that travel day, you've burnt an entire day of an itinerary. Whereas, for instance, you know, some of those aircraft, the twin engine pistons that Sins went through earlier on, she's done a fair amount of charter from the Sabi Sands directly to Maun, clearing customs in Petersburg and then in Maun. And it's basically a 2 to 3 hour or 2 or 3 hour long experience, and then you're in Maun and you can be catching an afternoon game drive in the Delta. So yes, you know, by the time you've looked at all of your schedule flight, you know, maybe your charter back to KMI and then all of the schedules, flights and everything else, by the time you've got to the lodge in Maun, it might be more cost effective actually to charter an aircraft from the Sabi Sands directly to Maun. Something to think about. A lot of you also always ask us about, you know, is Cindy prepared to put on a schedule or something between, you know, the Sabi Sands and Madikwe? Well, CessZani's not a schedule airline, it's a charter airline. But once again, you might find by the time you've looked at all the schedules and the time and possible road transfers from Joburg into, or whatever the case is, you might find that it's you know, definitely going to be saving time, a hell of a lot of time, and it might even be cost effective to charter directly from the Sabi Sands to the Madikwe if you want to. So I think what the point I'm trying to make is charter anywhere in South Africa. You know, you absolutely, these two ladies are at the coalface of their business. You're not dealing with a reservations, you know, sort of consultant who it's just another job for them. This, you know, Roxanne's been there from the beginning. Cindy, this is a passion of hers. So you've got an owner who's completely invested in a company, and you need to reach out and chat to them. And that's the service that you're not going to get from, you know, bigger airlines, bigger charter companies. The absolute owner involved service and willing to discuss and for the flexibility and work out a solution for you, I think is one of their key selling points as well. And, you know, absolutely, you know, if you're getting other quotes and CessZani's not matching up chat to Cindy, maybe she can sharpen her pencil a little bit, and she'll tell you straight if she can't sharpen her pencil. But ultimately, it might be worthwhile chatting to her. She might be able to beat another quote that you've got. Just lastly, on the Joburg to Botswana or Maun, obviously with Botswana, inverted commas, starting to open up. We've had quite a few, we did the KDB webinar 2 weeks, a week or two ago, and we've had quite a few requests, for trying to book safari in the Delta or the Central Kalahari. And, with the schedules and the delay in the schedule, flights opening up, if you've got a family or group of friends traveling together, it can be very cost effective to look at a charter option from Johannesburg into Maun, and then they can still do their safari now. So, and in fact, Cindy's had to quote on a couple of different options already to get people into Botswana. So please remember those Joburg aircraft, and she will be absolutely competitive, and you'll get the CessZani service. I think I've got nothing more to kind of add. Sins and Rocks, any last parting words?
No, just obviously the reason we have the varied fleet of aircraft available is so that we can be more cost effective, and that we can, give the client the best option possible, as opposed to having one type of aircraft and that's it, take it or leave it. That's the whole reason at the end of the day that we have had the very fleet. So if there is something also, when you're comparing quotes at the end of the day, compare aircraft. The aircraft is quite important at the end of the day to compare apples with apples. That's basically all that I have to add. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, sorry guys, and I'll touch on that quickly, because if you're trying to charter a Pilates PC-12, or another, I don't know, let's call it a twin engine 6 or 7 seater, your price is going to be remarkably different, and so Pilates is an expensive plane to fly. So yeah, look at the planes. That's a very critical and crucial point. And thanks for bringing that up. And very, very briefly, before we come back to you, Rogan, just going straight back to the beginning of the presentation, Cindy just very briefly said, we don't shuttle. I need to explain that in layman's terms, and having been a guide in the Sabi Sands for a number of years before I started Africa in Focus, you'd have, especially guests coming in that's, light aircraft, and we had to land 3 times at 3 other different airstrips, Safari Lodge airstrips before we got to you, and I'm feeling a bit sick. Well, the shuttle means exactly that. It's basically for the layman in the industry, you and I, not people who are operational like Cindy and Roxanne. It's basically a lodge hop, where you can be landing at 3 different lodge airstrips before your point of final, your lodge where your guests are climbing off. And Cindy absolutely does not do that. CessZani offers it's a charter from KMIA directly into the lodge without 3 other landings, and she's doing that at pretty much a seat rate which is competitive with those companies that are offering the inverted commas shuttle or lodge hopper. So bear that in mind, guys, for your clients. It's the more that the client can enjoy their overall itinerary, and the ease with which the smoothness with which everything goes off is ultimately going to impact their eventual outlook on their holiday in Southern Africa. So try and make it easy for them. Try and get them to point A to point B quickly to enjoy the lodges that they're in, and Cindy offers you that option. Rogan, over to you.
Great. I've just got 2 questions that's come through, Sins. You mentioned earlier that you fly into Skukuza, but it's only approved the month of travel. Is there ever any issues with getting that approval, or is it usually a given?
Rogan, if we get the request, let's say 4 months in advance, we apply 4 months in advance. So Skukuza generally, historically, have worked on a first come, first served basis. So if the slots are taken, their hands are tied at the end of the day, because they only have 20 slots a day available. So we have said to our agents, please, when you get the request, send it through. And the sooner we apply, the more chance we have of getting that slot.
Okay, thanks, Sins.
I think just to answer the question straight,
no, we haven't
never
ever
had an issue getting a slot.
No.
Great. Any more questions, Rogan?
Yeah, there's one left. We've just got somebody asking, do we need to be IATA registered to make use of your services as part of our travel packages?
No, because we're not an airline, we're a charter company. So we would basically work on a booking system where we're not online. So anybody can book with us at the end of the day. They don't have to be IATA approved or registered. No.
Great. Those are all the questions that's come through. Thanks so much for the presentation.
Thank you very much.
So, yeah, you'll look forward to an email from us with some follow-up detail. I'll provide Cindy and Roxanne's contact details as well as the video link to this webinar. From our side, yeah, parting thoughts, or you guys done? Can we close this off, Cindy and Roxanne?
No, if anybody has any more questions, they're also after this presentation, when they get all the details, you know, sometimes when you have a webinar, you think of questions afterwards, please feel free to send it through to us afterwards. We're available, no problem.
Fantastic, and thank you. I just want to finish off by saying thanks to everyone who's tuned in to this webinar today and given up your valuable time, and a massive thank you to Cindy and Roxanne for spending some time with us to take us through their product. Thanks, Rogan, for the technical stuff and getting us sorted out in the beginning. And yeah, guys, thank you very much for this webinar, and we'll catch you next week with the Garanga Safari Camp or the Clarendon Collection. I'm actually not sure, but one of them. So we catch you next week. Thanks very much for this one, and have a good day. Cheers, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.